We live in interesting times. Today's stories. The Palestinian government to collaborate with Israel on a new coronavirus threat. Italian Prime Minister gives a presser as a novel coronavirus sparks fear. China says coronavirus vaccine trials to start around late April. Thousands join a climate protest in Sydney. A meal a day, struggling to survive climate change in Zambia.
Sometimes we eat once in a day. Sometimes we
The WHO sounds alarm over Africa coronavirus preparedness. The WHO says the window of opportunity to contain the virus is narrowing. President Donald Trump says he would sign a peace deal with the Taliban.
We can do that very quickly.
Sanders vows to win across the country after Nevada's caucus victory.
Yorkville Ice Festival.
Plus, in Toronto, the Yorkville Ice Festival brings back the cool 1980s.
All representing the city's dynamic.
This is Eagle News coming to you from Washington, D.C., bringing you stories from around the globe. I am Rose Papa Angeles. And now for the details. Its Health Minister Mai Al-Khaila says during a press conference in Ramallah, the Palestinian government is ready to collaborate with Israel only on the new coronavirus threat.
فقد قامت الطواقم الطبية في وزارة الصحة بإجراء 79 فحصا لحالات مشتبه بإصابتها بالفيروس، كان آخرها يوم أمس حيث جرى أخذ عينة 51 عينة، وقد كانت جميع النتائج التي صدرت سلبية، أي أن أصحابها غير مصابين بمرض الكورونا كوفيد، ولكن من الممكن أن يكونوا ناقلين للفيروس. نحن لدينا تنسيق ثنائي مع كل من جمهورية مصر العربية الشقيقة والمملكة الأردنية الشقيقة وأيضا مع إسرائيل، والذين تدربوا على مهارات الفحص المخبري كانوا في مستشفى تل هاشمير. نعم، بس في هذا السياق في موضوع الكورونا فقط لا غير. فقد فعلت الوزارة الاستراتيجية الوطنية للاستجابة للطوارئ في حالة الأمراض المعدية، إضافة إلى التنسيق مع الشركاء الوطنيين كافة والوزارات كل حسب اختصاصه ومسؤوليته.
Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte gives a press conference on the situation in Italy as the number of confirmed infections from the novel coronavirus rose sharply to 79 on Saturday, in an outbreak that has claimed 2 lives in the country. The Italian outbreak is concentrated in the northern region of Lombardy.
Ovviamente nelle aree interessate che abbiamo individuato come focolai disporremo anche, sono state veramente già disposte, è stata disposta la sospensione delle attività lavorative sia nella forma di intraprese collettive che nelle forme di iniziative individuali. È stata disposta anche la sospensione di manifestazioni pubbliche, di eventi vari. Più in generale, col decreto legge che abbiamo predisposto oggi allarghiamo anche il raggio, quindi le autorità competenti, i ministri competenti potranno anche adottare ulteriori misure che semmai non riguardano le aree in questo momento individuate come focolai, soggette a restrizione per quel che riguarda la circolazione delle persone, ma anche le restanti aree del territorio nazionale. La ministra Azzolina dell'istruzione ci ha preannunciato la sospensione, che disporrà la sospensione dei viaggi di istruzione per quanto riguarda le scuole in Italia e anche all'estero, queste su tutto il territorio nazionale.
2 deaths from the new coronavirus sparked fears throughout northern Italy on Saturday, as about 50,000 people were poised for a weeks-long lockdown imposed by authorities trying to halt a further increase in infections. Italy on Friday became the first country in Europe to report the death of one of its own nationals from the virus, triggering travel restrictions in about a dozen towns where the number of people contaminated has continued to rise. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said that people living inside the affected areas in the northern regions would be restricted to those areas while schools and businesses close as part of measures designed to stem new infections. A 77-year-old woman died on Saturday near the small town of Codogno in Lombardy in the north, a day after a 78-year-old retired bricklayer succumbed to the virus in the neighboring region of Veneto. The head of Italy's Civil Protection Department, Angelo Borelli, said the number of confirmed cases of coronavirus rose to 79 by late Saturday, including the 2 deceased. Most are in the region of Lombardy, but 3 other regions in Italy's north have confirmed cases, as well as the central region of Lazio, which includes the capital, Rome. Newspaper Corriere della Sera reported that the virus had also been identified in Milan, Lombardy's largest city and the financial center of Italy. Lombardy's health chief Giulio Galera told a press conference earlier on Saturday the contagiousness of this virus is very strong and pretty virulent. But he cautioned today is not a pandemic. Conte warned that the restrictive measures would last for a couple of weeks, corresponding to the length of time the virus incubates. He said some 50,000 people who had already been asked to stay at home by local authorities will be affected. Italian authorities have also ordered the postponement of 3 Series A football matches on Sunday. He urged people not to give in to feelings of panic. An official said Friday China could start clinical trials for a potential vaccine for the novel coronavirus around late April. Public and private researchers around the world have been working to develop treatments and vaccines to combat the COVID-19 virus that first emerged in central China in December. More than 2,200 people have died and more than 75,000 have been infected by it in China. Another 11 people died abroad, with some 1,100 infections in around 25 countries.
在疫苗研发方面，多路线部署并行推进研发，预计最快的疫苗将于4月下旬左右申报临床试验。就目前而言，我国各类技术路线的疫苗研制都基本与国外同步。到昨天为止，我们已经有超过100名康复者献出他们的血浆。这100名康复者献出的血浆，大概我们能制成240份左右的医疗人的血浆，也就是能够对240个重病或危重病人进行施救。
Su said China's vaccine development and research is currently basically in step with other countries. The World Health Organization said Tuesday it could take a year or longer for a vaccine to become available. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said, quote, "The vaccine could be long-term because it could take up to 12 to 18 months, and this is like preparing for the worst situation." Zhang Yixin, Deputy Director of China's National Health Commission, said China is currently using 5 different approaches to develop the vaccine to curb the spread of the virus. These include using inactivated coronavirus to produce a vaccine, using genetic engineering to mass-produce proteins that could act as antigens for the novel coronavirus, or modifying existing vaccines for influenza, Zhang said. He said, at present, some projects have entered the stage of animal testing. Scientists here in the U.S. announced Wednesday they had created the first 3D atomic scale map of the part of the novel coronavirus that attaches to and infects human cells, a critical step toward developing vaccines and treatments. In other news, thousands of protesters gathered in Sydney calling for action on climate change. The protesters also marched through the city streets as part of the rally, which comes after devastating bushfires in the country. Take a look.
And I have a brand new grandchild, my first grandchild. She's 4 months old, and I think that's also fired up my passion, as has the Australian bushfires and the floods and the pollution in the air. My grandchild has hardly been able to come out because we've been checking the atmosphere and the safety ratings. And I think it's time now, this is beyond politics.
The ruling government's struggling to find a way to reflect what the people want. The majority of the people want it to take some strong action about climate change. But I think the government is very slow because it has people within its own ranks that don't want to see the end of coal mining or coal exports, whereas I think the people want something completely different.
Millions are facing starvation in Zambia, one of the countries hit hard by a severe drought in southern Africa, with average temperatures in the region rising twice as fast as the global mean. Here's the report.
Lizzie walked hours to fetch this food aid so she could feed her 4 children at least one meal a day.
Sometimes we eat once in a day. Sometimes when we find some other sources, we eat twice in a day.
A severe drought is gripping the area around Simumbwe in southern Zambia. Humanitarian groups are handing out maize and beans, the first distribution in the area. Food shortages also affect schooling.
I've got 70 pupils in my class. Just because of this hunger, there is absenteeism. Like for today, there were only 30 pupils in my class out of 70.
It rained recently, but don't be fooled by the greenery. Crops have been failing for years. 45 million people are at risk of famine in southern Africa, according to the UN's World Food Programme. 4 hours drive east lies the Kariba Dam, which produces around 40% of Zambia's electricity. But now, because of the drought, the turbines can't produce enough power.
For the year 2020, we are looking at a target of 275 megawatts. So basically that's about 25% of the plant capacity of the Kariba North Bank power station to be utilized as a result of the low water levels.
Lower rainfall is forcing farmers like Godfrey to change their methods. He now plants different varieties of crops and uses a water meter. If these measures fail, it will threaten his family's future.
There are no formal jobs in Zambia, so we have to farm to have food to eat. Secondly, this is how we put our children through school.
From a daily meal to school attendance and economic growth, climate change has spiraling effects that are hard to stop.
Up next, the WHO sounds alarm over Africa coronavirus preparedness. The WHO says the window of opportunity to contain the virus is narrowing. President Donald Trump says he would sign a peace deal with the Taliban. Sanders vows to win across the country after Nevada's caucus victory. Plus, in Toronto, the Yorkville Ice Festival brings back the cool 1980s. Eagle News will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Eagle News coming to you from Washington, D.C. More on the coronavirus threat. The World Health Organization warns that African health systems would be ill-equipped to respond to the deadly coronavirus outbreak should cases start to proliferate on the continent. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, speaking by video link from Geneva, said during a meeting of 36 African health ministers at AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, quote, "Our biggest concern continues to be the potential for COVID-19 to spread in countries with weaker health systems."
We are facing a looming threat, a serious threat for the continent, which requires both a technical and political advocacy. That if truly we have a virus introduced on the continent and it becomes a larger issue, the ability to procure diagnostics in a timely fashion to support that testing will still be limited.
In some member states, we have weak public health institutions, weak systems, health systems. We have gaps in the diagnostics. We have gaps also for the treatments and the measures we need to take quickly. But I think by joining our collective efforts as African member states, by the leadership of WHO and the joint effort between WHO and Africa CDC, we managed very quickly to fill in the gaps of the diagnostics capabilities in the continent. Because when
the World Health Organization warns that the window of opportunity to stop the spread of the coronavirus outbreak is shrinking, amid concern over a surge in cases with no clear link to China.
So what I believe is the window of opportunity is still there. But where our window of opportunity is narrowing, I would put it that way, narrowing. Although the total number of cases outside China remains relatively small, we're concerned about the number of cases with no clear epidemiological link, such as travel history to China or contact with a confirmed case. Our situation is that we're still in a phase where containment is possible with a narrowing window of opportunity. And if there is anything move into another level, then we will announce it as soon as possible. We'll be the first to tell you that we're shifting into another level.
Meanwhile, a senior U.S. official said Friday, adding that future evacuations of ship passengers were not guaranteed. Americans should avoid traveling by cruise liner within Asia because this vessel acts as the amplifiers of the novel coronavirus. President Donald Trump said Sunday he would sign a peace deal with the Taliban if one were eventually reached in Afghanistan. Take a look.
Sign the deal with them if you have them here, or where would you do it? We haven't decided. I want to see how this period of a week works out. We can do that very quickly. You would put your name on it. Yeah. Assuming it works out over the next less than a week, I would put my name on it here. It's time to come home, and they want to stop. You know, they've been fighting a long time. They're tough people. We're tough people. But after 19 years, that's a long time. So
Trump's comments came after a partial truce took effect in Afghanistan on Saturday, with the Taliban, U.S. and Afghan forces agreeing to a week-long reduction in violence. The truce was intended to set conditions for Washington and the insurgents to sign a deal in Doha on February 29 that could ultimately lead to a withdrawal of U.S. forces after more than 18 years. Trump was not specific about what document he would be willing to sign, but said decisions were contingent on progress during the initial truce. Progressive firebrand Bernie Sanders claimed a decisive victory Saturday in the Nevada caucuses, solidifying his front-runner status in the race to choose the Democratic nominee who faces President Donald Trump in November's election. Sanders was comfortably ahead with some 10% of the vote reported, and his win is a substantial accomplishment in a state seen as an important bellwether because it is the first diverse electorate to weigh in on the 2020 presidential race. NBC News reported that the 78-year-old senator from Vermont was leading with 44.7% of the vote, followed by former Vice President Joe Biden at 19.5%. South Bend, Indiana's former Mayor Pete Buttigieg stood at 15.6%, while Progressive Senator Elizabeth Warren was at 11.8%, and Senator Amy Klobuchar will back at 4.3%.
Let me thank the people of Nevada for their support. In Nevada, we have just put together a multi-generational, multi-racial coalition, which is going to not only win in Nevada, it's going to sweep this country. We are going to win across the country because the American people are sick and tired of a president who lies all of the time. They are sick and tired of a corrupt administration. They want an administration which is based on the principles of justice. Economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. Brothers and sisters, if we stand together, we will not only defeat Trump, we will transform this country and create a government and an economy that works for all of us, not wealthy campaign contributors. Thank you all.
Sanders was speaking in El Paso, Texas, one of the 14 states that votes on Super Tuesday on March 3, when he hopes his progressive policies, including universal health care and raising the minimum wage, will strike a chord with millions of Americans. Some of Sanders' rivals, like the moderate Buttigieg, already congratulated him on his Nevada victory. But the 38-year-old military veteran offered a stern warning against picking a self-described democratic socialist who sees capitalism as the root of all evil, going up against populist Trump. Buttigieg said in an address, quote, "Senator Sanders believes in an inflexible ideological revolution that leaves out most Democrats, not to mention most Americans." With Sanders coming in virtually tied for first in the debut contest in Iowa and then winning New Hampshire last week, he is in the driver's seat against his 7 rivals as the race turns towards South Carolina and then Super Tuesday. President Trump offered congratulations of sorts to Sanders. Trump tweeted, quote, "Looks like Crazy Bernie is doing well in the great state of Nevada. Congratulations, Bernie, and don't let them take it away from you." In Canada, stuck in the 80s or just a fan of time travel? This year's Yorkville Ice Festival brings to Toronto the cool 1980s pop culture. And when we say cool, we mean both figuratively and literally. How, you may ask? Eagle News correspondent Angela Milano has the story. Let's take a look.
Despite the winter chilly weather, locals and visitors alike are chilling with glee here in Toronto's village of Yorkville Park for the 15th annual Yorkville Ice Festival, a 2-day spectacular event showcasing ice sculptures, activities, food, and music, all representing the city's dynamic cultures and the event's current theme of the awesome 80s. The ice sculptures are definitely the main ice attractions of this event. From celebrity figures, video games, fashion, and 80s pop culture, visitors can walk through the streets and be amazed by the beautifully carved pieces people can look at and take pictures with. One featured installation is located in their photo opportunity area. Kids, teens, adults, and fans of Back to the Future franchise gather around to see a sculpture of the famous DeLorean from the movies. An ice sculpting competition attracted artists to exhibit their crafts and display their finished works for guests to see. Also, following the theme, the sculptures bring the 80s back to life with cool designs and interpretations of the decade. Warming stations are a must in this outdoor event. There is the Ice Fest Lounge where people can relax, warm up, and listen to the music curated by the DJs and be presented with dancing performances that will make you get up and groove with the music. In Canada, February is Heart Month in support of the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and the festival is supporting a good cause of raising awareness on heart health. Visitors can try the maple syrup taffy and play vintage arcade games by making monetary contributions. These event proceeds will then be donated by the festival to the Heart and Stroke Foundation. It is not hard for the 80s to make a comeback in this event where everything and everyone is already retro cool. From Toronto, Canada, Angela Milano, Eagle News 1 with 25.
Thanks, Angela. That is today's Eagle News. Join us again tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on Facebook at facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I am Rose Papa Angeles, and I am 1 with 25.